a love story that changed Boat and Oat forever. Subscribe for more unforgettable K-drama twists. The night was quiet, yet the air trembled, as if the moon itself was holding its breath. At the edge of a soundstage drowned in silver light stood two silhouettes, eyes locked, hearts uncertain. Boat Yonggyet Termchuo and Oat Pasikorn Sanratana, names that once echoed in laughter, now whispered in fate's shadow. The cameras hadn't started rolling. The world hadn't yet known what not would mean. But somewhere between the last line of the script and the first beat of their hearts, something began. Something forbidden, fierce, and far too real. When the production team revealed Not, Thailand's first real Omegaverse BL, it was more than a project. It was a dare. A world where destiny wasn't defined by gender, where instinct ruled over reason, and love defied every law written by men. Fans gasped, critics questioned, and the actors hesitated. Boat read the script under a flickering light, each page heavier than the last. Oat, ever calm, traced the words with quiet intensity, his eyes holding that familiar storm that hides behind still water. The roles weren't just romantic, they were revolutionary. They demanded vulnerability so raw that even seasoned actors feared it. And yet, when Oat looked up from the script, Boat's breath caught. Something unspoken passed between them, the kind of silence that speaks louder than thunder. "If we do this," Oat whispered, "we do it completely. No pretending." Boat nodded. No masks. No walls. That was the moment the pact was born, a secret vow beneath the hum of studio lights. No one heard it, but destiny did. The first day of filming was chaos painted in color. Fans screamed from behind the barricades, lights flared, microphones dangled above every word. But once the director yelled action, the world faded, and only they remained. Their first scene together was a confrontation, fierce, breathless, close enough that air itself seemed to flee. Lines turned into whispers, whispers turned into tremors. When Boat's hand brushed Oat's cheek, the world didn't just watch, it felt. Cameras captured perfection, but behind the scenes, emotions blurred like watercolor. Boat found himself thinking about the way Oat laughed offset, about how his silence carried 1,000 stories. Oat noticed how Boat rehearsed under his breath, how his eyes stayed soft even in fury. Their characters were written to collide, alpha and omega, dominance and surrender. But their real-life connection was gentler, deeper, endlessly dangerous. Sometimes, Boat confessed in an interview, "I forget where the scene ends and I begin." Oat smiled beside him. That's because truth doesn't stop when the camera does. Every drama has a scene that defines it, and Not had the rain. That night, clouds gathered like secrets waiting to fall. The script called for heartbreak, betrayal, realization, love that was too late yet too strong to die. Boat stood under the artificial rain, soaked in both water and emotion. Oat stepped toward him, trembling, every droplet cutting through the thin line between acting and honesty. "You tied me to a destiny I never asked for," Boat's voice cracked through the storm. "Then untie me," Oat replied, tears real this time. When they embraced, the rain wasn't the only thing falling. So were their guards. The crew felt it. The air changed. The camera trembled slightly, as if even metal understood emotion. And when the director finally called cut, no one moved. For a heartbeat, they stood there. Two actors, drenched, shaking, lost in something neither could name. Later that night, fans would call it the scene that felt too real. They weren't wrong. The internet exploded. Clips of their gazes flooded TikTok, montages of their smiles lit up YouTube, and hashtags like #BoatOat trended worldwide. Some called it acting genius. Others swore there was something more. Behind the scenes, the whispers grew louder. Crew members spoke of the late-night rehearsals, the shared headphones, the way Boat always waited for Oat even after filming wrapped. Some said the chemistry was method acting. Others said it wasn't acting at all. In interviews, their answers were always measured. "We respect each other deeply. It's all for the art." but their eyes told a different story. Boat began to smile less when Oat wasn't around. Oat started carrying his phone face down. Between every cut, there was a silence thick enough to cut with a blade. The line between character and soul had vanished, and neither knew how to draw it back. Halfway through filming, the pressure boiled over. A leaked behind-the-scenes clip showed an argument, voices raised, eyes wet. The internet lost its mind. Are Boat and Oat fighting? But few knew what really happened that night. It wasn't anger. It was confusion, the kind born from hearts that didn't know which world they belonged to. We said no masks, Boat whispered. And now? Oat's voice cracked. Now I can't tell who you want me to be, the man in the script or the one standing right here. That night, Oat left the set early. Boat stayed behind, staring at the fake rain machine, the same one that once washed away their fears. He realized then, Not wasn't just a story about love that breaks rules, it was a mirror held up to their souls. Weeks later came the final sequence, a confession written in silence and tears. They stood in an empty hall, light slicing through the darkness, like memory. The director said, "Make it real." And they did. Boat reached for Oat, voice trembling. "Every thread between us, I tried to break it, but it keeps finding me." "Then maybe it's not meant to be broken," Oat whispered. The scene was supposed to end with a simple touch. But Boat didn't stop. He leaned in, not as his character, but as himself, and for a moment, time bowed to truth. When the director finally called cut, no one clapped. There was only silence, the kind that exists when hearts understand something words can't explain. When not wrapped, both men disappeared from the spotlight for a while. Boat traveled, quiet beaches, no cameras. Oat went home, silence, reflection, unread messages. But destiny, as always, refused to untangle them. They met again months later at a fan event in Taipei. The crowd screamed, the lights flashed, and for a second, their eyes found each other, and the world remembered. Oat smiled first. Boat followed. The knot, it seemed, was never truly undone. When Knot finally aired, it shattered expectations. It wasn't just another BL drama. It was a revolution. Viewers cried, debated, and replayed scenes until every breath between Boat and Oat became legend. The show became a metaphor for every forbidden love the world tried to silence. And Boat and Oat, they became more than actors. They became symbols of what happens when art stops pretending and starts feeling. Critics praised the depth, the rawness, the quiet intensity. But fans felt something deeper. They said Knot wasn't just about the characters, it was about them. The way they looked at each other off-screen, the way silence spoke louder than dialogue. Even now, when they stand together at events, there's a visible tether, invisible but undeniable. Not romance, not rumor, but something sacred, a shared truth forged in fiction and sealed by emotion. In an interview months later, when asked what Knot meant to him, Boat paused for a long time. "It taught me that some stories don't end when the credits roll." And Oat, sitting beside him, simply said, "Some knots aren't meant to be untied." The lights dimmed, the microphones faded, and for a brief, suspended moment, every fan watching could feel it. The bond that began as a script survived as emotion and lived on as legend. Because sometimes the stories that change us most aren't the ones written for the screen, but the ones that slip between reality and fiction, the ones that tie two souls together and whisper softly to the world. Love isn't always meant to be understood. Sometimes, it's just meant to be felt. The studio was empty when Boat returned that night. The rain machine still hung from the ceiling, silent now, its steel arms dripping from the storm that had ended hours ago. The scent of wet fabric and unfinished emotion lingered in the air. He stood there, eyes tracing the faint footprints the crew had left behind, and imagined Oats among them, fading, but never gone. The storm outside matched the one within him. He could still hear Oats' voice, trembling, raw, the echo of their argument looping in his chest. "Now I can't tell who you want me to be." The words had sliced through him cleaner than lightning. Boat picked up a half-wet script lying on the table. The ink had bled slightly, as if even the paper couldn't hold the weight of what was written. He smiled bitterly. Acting had always been his refuge, the one place where he could hide behind someone else's heart. But with Oat, there was no hiding. Every scene became a confession neither of them had planned to make. When dawn came, he didn't go home. He stayed until the lights flickered back on, until the world turned ordinary again. The director found him there, eyes red, holding the script like it was something sacred. "Are you ready for tomorrow's shoot?" she asked gently. He nodded. "I've never been readier. But I don't know if I'm acting anymore." By the next evening, they were filming again, a quiet kitchen scene meant to capture the aftermath of Heartbreak. No rain this time, no storm, just the soft hum of a refrigerator and the sound of one person breathing beside another. Oat entered the frame. His movements were careful, as though every step carried the memory of what had been said. When he sat across from Boat, the distance between them was small but heavy. The director whispered through her mic, "Hold the silence. Let the tension breathe." They did. For 20 seconds, neither spoke. The camera rolled, the crew didn't blink. Boat's hand trembled slightly as he lifted his cup of tea. Oat's eyes followed the motion, then drifted back to his lips. When the line finally came, it was unscripted. Boat looked at him and murmured, "You're still here." Oat didn't hesitate. "I never left." The director gasped. The line wasn't in the script, but she didn't stop them. The camera kept rolling as Boat's lip quivered, and a single tear escaped down his cheek. Oat reached across the table, touched his hand, and for that brief, trembling second, the entire crew forgot they were filming. That take became the version used in the final edit. Fans would later call it the scene that broke the silence. What they never knew was that no one told Oat to say it. He meant it. But behind the applause, something darker grew. Rumors began to swirl that the director had seen too much chemistry. Some said the producers wanted to tone down the emotion, afraid the pair's closeness might overshadow the show itself. Others whispered about jealousy. Other actors, sponsors, people who didn't understand how something so raw could exist between two professionals. To the outside world, Boat and Oat smiled through every interview, every flash of the camera. But backstage, words were measured, and silence became safer than truth. Then came the overseas shoot, 3 days in a small coastal town south of Phuket. The script called for a farewell under fading light. Boat arrived early, barefoot on the sand, the sea whispering like an old secret. The crew prepared the cameras, but Oat wasn't there yet. He waited, staring into the horizon where sky and water kissed. When Oat finally appeared, wind tugging at his white shirt, it was as if time folded in on itself. For a moment, the entire set seemed to vanish. The director gave a quiet signal, and the cameras began to roll. The scene started with a distance between them, 10 steps of separation, the script said. But as Boat delivered his lines, he found himself moving closer. Oat's eyes widened, but he didn't move away. When Boat stopped in front of him, barely an inch apart, he whispered the line that wasn't written anywhere. "Tell me it was all acting." Oat swallowed, his throat tight. The ocean roared louder, drowning everything but their breathing. "If I say yes," he said, "would you believe me?" Boat shook his head. "No." When the director finally yelled cut, neither of them moved. The crew looked at each other uncertainly. Were they still in character? Or had something real just unfolded before their eyes? No one dared to ask. That night, when everyone left, Boat and Oat stayed behind. The tide crept closer. The moon hung low. Oat picked up a seashell and handed it to him. "A knot," he said softly, "isn't about being trapped. It's about being bound by choice." Boat smiled faintly. "Then maybe that's what we are, a choice that doesn't end when the scene does." They never spoke of that night again, but from then on, the tension softened into something quieter. Understanding, not denial. On screen, they were still Alpha and Omega, rivals and lovers. Off-screen, they were two souls learning how to breathe in the same silence. When not premiered, fans replayed that beach scene endlessly. Some said they could see something unspoken pass between them right before the frame faded to black. Others swore it wasn't acting. Weeks after the finale, Boat was asked during a fan meeting which scene meant the most to him. He smiled, glanced at Oat, and said, "The one that wasn't written." The crowd roared, but Oat just looked at him quietly, the kind of look that says everything words are too shy to hold. After the event, when they were alone in the green room, Oat laughed softly. "You shouldn't have said that." Boat looked up. "Why not?" "It's true. Because now they'll know." Boat leaned back, eyes glinting. "Let them." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was warm, like an echo of everything they had survived together. The rumors, the sleepless nights, the blurred lines between love and art. Before they left, Boat turned to him and said, "You know, they called our story forbidden." Oat tilted his head, smiling. "And yet here we are." In that moment, something unspoken settled between them again. Not romance, not performance, but a bond built from shared vulnerability, the kind of connection that doesn't need labels. The world would continue to speculate. Directors would continue to praise their chemistry. Fans would continue to wonder what was real. But Boat and Oat? They had already stopped asking that question. Because somewhere between the first script reading and that final ocean breeze, they'd learned a truth that only a few ever find, that sometimes the strongest stories aren't written on paper, but lived quietly between two beating hearts. And though the show had ended, its pulse lingered, in every glance they shared, in every silence that said too much, and in every invisible thread that refused to break. Even now, when they stand side by side under blinding lights, something unseen still hums between them. Not a secret, not a rumor, but a memory. A knot, still tied, still alive, reminding them both that some stories don't need to end to stay eternal. Because once a thread connects two souls in truth, no amount of time, distance, or denial can untie it. And that is what Not Really was. Not a show, not a script, but a love story whispered into existence and felt forever.